If you've been curious about EMDR, this episode is for you. I'm going to dive into who it's for, how it works, and answer a lot of the questions that I get when I talk to people one-on-one. So let's dive in. First of all, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. In the 90s, Francine Shapiro went for a walk in the woods and noticed that the way that the light was filtering through the trees made her eyes move back and forth, and something about that was so calming. And so she started to dive into that and wondered, is there a way to use this? Is there something about our biology that kind of makes this natural phenomenon happen? And so that was really the start of EMDR. And the reason it's called EMDR is this eye movement that was associated with it when she initially kind of discovered this natural response in our body. Over time, we've learned that it doesn't have to be the eye movement. What we know is that it's actually the alternating bilateral stimulation that sends those soothing signals to our brain. That just means we're taking turns on both sides. So alternating bilateral stimulation is a lot of words, and it's a very kind of wordy way to say just taking turns on both sides. And that can be with our eyes moving back and forth. It can be with, tapping on your body left and right. It can also be an audio. So I'm going to link it in the show notes, but there's one of my favorite ways to kind of settle my nervous system and focus is to put on headphones and listen to EMDR audio music. It's calming, meditative music is the start of it, but instead of just listening, the sound being the same in both headphones, it actually gets louder in one and fades in the other and then fades to the other side. So this alternating stimulation puts our brain into a state similar to REM sleep. When you go to sleep at night, you get into that REM state. That's your brain's way of processing the day. This is what's happening during that REM state. So whatever happened throughout the day, your brain gets into that state and then starts to file things away. This is kind of how I picture it, like a little secretary inside of your brain going, this goes into this cabinet, this goes into this cabinet, we're going to throw this away, we don't need it anymore. And so all the things that you've taken in through the day gets processed in that way. Well, when we use alternating bilateral stimulation, which is a huge component of EMDR, we're intentionally putting our brain into that state so that we can refocus on, negative life experiences, traumatic memories, and reprocess them. Now, why do we want to do that? That's maybe your next question. When we talk about trauma, which is what we talk about most often when we talk about EMDR, what I really think of in terms of the definition of trauma is how we're responding to a negative event. And this response is not a choice. This is not something that, should ever be shamed, because this is what happened in your body. When you went through this negative event, this traumatic event, your amygdala decided this was something that was threatening your survival. This was something that was really, really unsafe, whether that's physical security, emotional security. There's a couple of different potentials. Because your amygdala made that split-second decision, rather than sending that information, that sensory information from that event into your prefrontal cortex, where we do all of our planning and thinking ahead, it actually bypassed all of this part of your brain and went through the vagus nerve. The reason that's important is because once that memory is stored in that way, we say it's stored in the body, not the brain. Here's how you can tell the difference in your own life, in your own experience. If you had a negative life event, you had something went wrong in your life, and you think back on it, and you can pretty rationally say, that was pretty bad. That wasn't a great time of my life, and thank goodness it's over. You have that emotional distance from it. You have that separation of time. You can feel that. When it's stored in our body, when it's a traumatic memory, and we'll get into this in a minute, but it doesn't matter the level of difficulty, right? Sometimes we do that comparison thing, like somebody else went through something harder. Why am I not getting over this? It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's really just a matter of how was it stored? Is it stored in your mind? Is it stored in your body? And if it's stored in your body, what will happen when you think of that event or something in your present life reminds you of that event, you will feel it emotionally, you'll feel it viscerally, as if you're living in that moment presently. So you don't have that emotional distance. You don't have that separation from the event. It continues to feel present. And that is really how we define trauma. That's really what it means to be living with trauma. And so when we think about how to move forward, when we think about how to heal from that, I talk to people all the time who say, I went to therapy for 2 years, 10 years, 14 years, and even though I can talk about it, I still feel controlled by it. I still feel that same feeling, and I can't seem to get past that. Or I get stuck and I can't move forward in this one area of my life. This is why. It's because a lot of times, we're using cognitive strategies to try to change our behavior, or we're using behavioral and cognitive strategies to change our thoughts and change our behavior, and use those to move forward. And those can be very effective for a lot of things in our lives. But with trauma, it doesn't erase the way that was stored. It doesn't change the way that memory was stored in your body. And so you still can't get that emotional separation or distance. So EMDR, going back to that, we intentionally put your brain into that, reprocessing state. Using alternating bilateral stimulation, we revisit the trauma, the negative life experience, the limiting belief, whatever it is that's holding you back. We revisit that, and now we can reprocess that memory so that it's not stored in your body anymore. We can move it to a place in your brain that's more manageable. When you go through this process, most people describe this sense of just lightness. The trauma and the burdens and the emotional weight that we carry, we don't always notice how heavy it is until we start to let it go. We start to feel that lightness, start to feel that freedom from being able to move that, reprocess that from our body into that part in our brain that can actually manage it, get that emotional distance, and really get that freedom from it. So that is really, in a broad sense of the terms, how EMDR works. It's, when people are thinking about whether or not this is for them or not for them, is this the right way to go? Because there's so many options. The question really is, thinking about whatever that situation is that you want to change, whatever that point of growth you want to get to, or that next level, or the healing that you're looking for. That's really the question. Is it something that's, when you think about it, you can't see the forest for the trees, you can't get out of that emotional activation, then you're probably a great candidate. EMDR, I've seen it work for people who have witnessed trauma, who've felt really, really deep loss in their life, powerful grief that they, seem to be kind of controlled by, in a sense. It's worked for people who have carried guilt for a long time about, a mistake they made in their life. It's worked for people who have carried some sort of limiting belief about themselves. So, whether it's, I'm somewhere not having the confidence, right? Confidence is a big part of what you can get that freedom from. So there are a lot of different reasons to use EMDR, to use this to give you that sense of freedom and that sense of healing. It's really just a matter of whether or not you feel like this is something that you're ready to move on from. If you've tried a lot of other things, there's a good chance that this is just something that's stored in your body, and that's why all of that hard work, all of that effort doesn't feel like it's paying off. What happens over time for a lot of people, they lose that confidence in themselves. They lose that confidence in, who they are. Maybe I'm just a bad person, or maybe there's a flaw, maybe there's something wrong with me, maybe I'm broken. And they just assume that that's just who they are. But the healing that takes place with the EMDR is so beautiful and so powerful, and gives you the freedom from that you can actually start to move forward and see that progress and see that growth. One of the other things that comes up a lot when someone's considering EMDR is trauma work is known for being really hard, really difficult, emotional work. And so a lot of people will say, am I ready? How do I know this is the right time? Do I need to make sure that life is kind of quiet and calm around me before I start on this work? And that's a really fair question. It's a really great question. And here's what I often say to that. One thing is, first of all, we never really know when things are going to calm down and be quiet and fine and easy in our life. A lot of times things pop up and things come up, and that's especially true if you're living with trauma. You're going to be more emotionally vulnerable. You're going to be triggered more often. You're going to have those limiting beliefs that are keeping you from taking the actions that are going to get you to a better place in your life. Second of all, with EMDR, there is that chance, right? Revisiting the trauma can be hard. When I do this work with people, we also have strategies that I teach for that quick nervous system regulation. So if you do start to feel any dysregulation throughout the week, throughout the days, after reprocessing, you have strategies, and we start those early on so that you've got the practice and you've used them enough that you know those go-to strategies that will keep you in a more settled and calm state. With that said, everyone that I've worked with have really not reported that type of experience, haven't had that emotional tidal waves, which is kind of what we expect, or what I think a lot of people expect to happen with this process, that they would suddenly open up Pandora's box or feel these tidal waves of emotions that they just don't know how to control or handle. That hasn't typically been the case. What's really happens more often than not is just feeling this lightness. You start to feel that release from healing that traumatic memory, so that it isn't overwhelming. In fact, all the other things around you start to become less overwhelming because you're in a better state to deal with them, to face those challenges as well. But I think one of the keys is having those strategies, having those methods for quick nervous system recovery. EMDR is really that long-term healing work that's going to give you those long-term effects. But in the short term, you really do need strategies that can help you regulate your nervous system quickly in the moment. And even though those may not give you the long-term healing and prevent those emotional responses in the future, at least in the moment, it gives you a way to recover quickly, to settle your nervous system, to get back to feeling yourself again, so that you can continue to live your life even as you are reprocessing these negative events or these difficult emotional states that you want to reprocess, relearn, heal from, so that you can move forward and find more success in your life, find more love, find more joy, find more peace, and let those be more of your natural state. Wake up feeling grateful every day. Wake up feeling, happy about the day and ready to enjoy it, to look forward to living your life and not just surviving it or just getting through the day or powering through or pushing through. We want to be able to flow through with ease and with joy. So that's the goal with the work that I do. If you have questions, if you are, even after listening to this, if you're like, yeah, but there's this other thing, or does this really work for me? Let me know. I'm happy to hop on a call with you and chat about it and really see if it's a good fit. It's in both of our best interests, right, to find the right fit. And if it's not the right fit, and I've done this plenty of times, I'll send resources that maybe can help you get on the right path. But if it is the right fit, it feels really great for both of us to witness that healing, to move from where you are now to where you really want to be, and to live the life that you deserve.